uh, on Zoom because I can't pass them through the Zoom thing. Yeah. So not yet. Yes, I know. I'm working on it, you know. So first of all, just a little info here. So we have a week together, and hopefully, you know, it's up to you how often you can come. That's great. I'm just happy. You know, I'm happy anyway. So it's, but it's also I'm going to spend this week talking. There's a word klesa, which it translates as sometimes is talked about as the poisons. So I want to talk about the poisons, and I want to some dialogue because one of the things is, I've been kind of sad lately because of our cultural, from wars to, the price of greed, hatred, and delusion is so intense, and this is no different this week than any other week where that happens, and I don't know, it just, it's like I'm sad for the trees, I'm sad for the people, I'm sad for so much of the world of what they call the poisons, the clay says, and yet at the same time, they are not who you are, but they are things that appear because of confusion, and ignorance. And they're really simple, The main one to me is delusion. I have a tough time with that one, being deluded type, you know. And but they talk about it. There's a big tanka out there of the what they call the wheel of life, and in the center are a pig, uh, a snake, and a chicken, a cock actually, and they all are holding each other's tails and they spin in a circle. And it is the center of our that causes us so much problem, so much delusion, so much suffering, you know. And the idea is that first of all, it's not you, it's not who you are. This is just there are states that arise due to conditions, and that these conditions come and we can learn to deal with them. That's what we're doing here. And but they are part of nature, you know. So delusion is pretty basic, Uh, I think when and we can use the word ignorance as well. And as human beings, in many ways we are simple creatures. We're fearful creatures. I'll say this: we're greedy people, you know, and we're also reactive in the sense of aversive or angry or that kind of thing. So they're just states that come due to conditions, So they aren't who you are, but they definitely affect how you live in your life, in your world. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these an evening. So we have delusion, which we'll kind of try to unpack a little bit about delusion. That's a really big one. And then there's, of course, attachment or greed, which is so prevalent in, you know, uh, in all cultures. These things are there, and we're so comfortable in the West, and we have so many options and comforts that we actually try to take and create a solidity in something that can't be solid. You know, it's a thing is it's, you know, everything you are, everything you think, uh, whatever you imagine, it's impermanent. It simply rises. And, you know, if we notice it, great. But if we just simply react to things that arise, then we have a very delusional life. And usually, you know, we may not suffer so much, but somebody else does around it. So it's kind of tricky in that way because, you know, oh, that was terrible. My thought just went through. I just thought of Trump and I thought delusion. And and I thought, oh my goodness, John, shut up. You definitely um, you know, the reaction that we have and how actually delusional we are. And you can see that in you know, particularly in our politicians, you know. And in many ways, we have to you know, this is all about, you know, it's self-awareness. And so a lot of times delusion is not something we know. You know, we can get reflections of, oops, that wasn't so cool. And then we kind of hopefully wake up. And this is a process of untangling that, you know, they are really in some ways the tricks of the mind of that somehow, you know, one candy bar wasn't enough. We need another one. That's called greed, you know. And, you know, if we don't like something or somebody, then we have that reaction, which usually is fairly disastrous. But, you know, sometimes we get what we want. Many times it's just a reaction on our part, you know. And then, you know, we also have pride and envy, which are two that aren't in this wheel usually out there, but in the Tibetan system. And I think it's really a helpful thing is to look at pride and envy. And, you know, those are really just we how we associate or see the world, you know. And so they are delusions. They are not who we are. They are just due to causes and conditions they arise. And our job is to, you know, see through it, not to be caught in the, you know, the vortex, because you know, when we don't like something, we usually try to either run away from it or push it away or attack it, you know. And that's not what we're looking at here. And in the same way that I think sometimes that's more in our capacity, you know, because anger, when we get angry and we're aversive to something, it immediately feels bad. But do we do something about it? A lot of times, no. It just increases reactivity, you know, and and it's, you know, it's not who you are. It's just simply due to causes and conditions. In the same way, and I think more subtle, is this thing of attachment, greed. And that one, you know, something made us feel good. And so we kind of take all of our resources so that we can elevate it or use it in some manner that is much more, you know, I want that second bar of chocolate, you know, or whatever it is. It's just, you know, this is just through the senses, and then this is very much through the senses. is that we like something and therefore we use um, our concentration and our abilities to then capture it or increase it or try to get more of it, And it's also part of the world of impermanent phenomena. It's just something due to conditions that arose and we attach to it. And when we attach to it, then um, we experience the consequences of attachment, you know. And so it's not something so unknown to you. These are really known things to you. The same way that, pride's a interesting one because it's really something about uh, the self being, better than, in the Buddhist kind of suttas, they have this thing that, that there's better than, the same as, or worse than, and all of those they're all distortions of what's true, and it's simply because they're partial truths, you know. And the idea here is we're looking for something that's actually quite workable, quite true in our experience. And envy, I guess you could say also jealousy. I just know, when I was young, I just remember, holy smokes, I was with this lady and she went off with some guy, and the next thing I knew, I was brokenhearted and I didn't know what jealousy really was. And then, whoa, wow, it's a strong emotion. In the same way, anger is a strong emotion. And I haven't had such the ferocity of anger. I haven't had such a big deal with that one. But in my early days, the jealousy was a big one. So there is something here for each of us in the sense of these, what they call the five poisons. And if you haven't experienced them, then holy smoke, uh, you're you're uh, you're good. But I know this is just, it's just the human condition. And in some ways, I think, things like anger, uh, boy, fire, you know, and that fire takes whatever intelligence is there and it actually takes it and warps it, you know. I'm more the greed type, oh, I want that. Oh, I want more of that. You notice all the Tibetan paintings here and everything. Well, how do you think they got here? It wasn't my just letting go of it. It was like, oh, that's really good. I want that. And so I collected this stuff, and now you get to see it and enjoy it. So it wasn't such a bad thing, but it was it was also I had these friends in Kathmandu, and I would go and kind of hang out with these artists, and they were great. You I learned a lot from their skills, and but here I am today. I'm going, oh, I just want to go and disappear, and you won't know where I am. Maybe some of you will, but most you won't know where I am. And I'll go and uh, uh, drop out of this cultural complexity here. It is, simply because we're so privileged. This is probably the richest, most privileged culture that has ever existed. How's that? And at the same time, here are these underlying forces that come and kind of mess it up for ourselves or someone else. And I think, in I can say in family systems, oh, yeah, there's a lot of, what is it? One of the ways of talking about this is the shadow, is these are the shadow forces. And things like families, things like, you know, comparison, wanting, all of that is all, it all warps what's actually true. And to warp it, then that delusion will create a reaction of, you know, greed, of hatred, of pride, of envy. So they're very fundamental, and they're not who we are, but there's no one that escapes not being influenced by them. And for some people, they are stimulated by not liking, so they have anger issues. And there are other people that have, greed issues. And all of it is based on delusional thinking. And we have a whole culture that's really good at delusional thinking, you know. And so we have to somehow be able to, uh, what is it? It's this monitoring, you know, because what is it based on? You know, okay, so I like there's something sensual. I like it. Therefore, I want more of it, you know. And so there's really no restraint. There's just more. And that more then, can become a hindrance at some point, you know. And so we have, this is who we are. We have these um, recognitions, and I think, I'm a deluded type, and it means that, I don't see clearly. So I need sometimes to get, you know, what is it? I have to get wake up calls from certain things that say, oh, that wasn't so good. Let's see if we can figure this one out. And, it's all, this is all, in a sense, kind of a, because I don't think those places are hindrances or poisons or whatever you want to call them. They have a luminous quality to them because they actually show us places where we're grasping and stuck on some level. And as we then get to know them, you know, uh, the delusion, the opposite to delusion is what? Wisdom, it's actually wisdom, pana, or prajna, you know, and the same way that when there's a lot of greed, what is its kind of opposite is generosity. And when you're able to let go of that that mental state, then there's actually a state of generosity towards all things, all beings, and then uh, uh, anger is an interesting one, or hate or aversion. And when we kind of, in a sense, and I'm going to use this word, we conquer it on some level, then there is metta. There is this, acceptance and loving kindness, which is not based on the aversion or anger or reactivity, but is actually based on wisdom of seeing, oh, I see that part of my nature, which has, attacked or run away from, or uh, is uh, is actually the doorway to loving kindness, you know. It's a challenge. All these are challenges. I'm not going to minimize them, you know. And I mean, fortunately, I don't have the anger one so much, but I have been angry in my life at different times, different circumstances. And I can see how, you know, one thing about that, it's addicting. You know, I don't know if that makes sense to you, but it's like, you know, it's goes back to the pride. I'm it's a righteousness that's there, and that righteousness is defensive and causes yourself or someone else pain, you know. And so hopefully you can wake up to that. But if you don't, uh, life will teach you it's okay. You know, this is one of the lovely things about these is that if you don't get it, you know, you or someone will get burned, and then you have a chance when you get burned to wake up. And I think that's true. And my dad was he was such an angry man, you know, and yet I know that there was another side of him. He had three dogs that were with him 24/7. It's like, you know, and he was really loved those dogs. And yet he had this, you know, part of it was what's it called? Not whiskey, bourbon. He drank a lot of bourbon. It was pretty rude. And and I had a lot of compassion for him because I saw how difficult his life had been. But that didn't, you know, it didn't absolve him, you know, from that anger. And you know, my reaction to it too, you know. And yet, you know, today, what would I say? I would say he was one of my greatest teachers, you know, and yet I, I wouldn't want him anywhere around my kids or anybody else, you know. Um, but I learned a lot because of that, you know. And I think we can take all these things, these places, these hindrances, these uh, these, you know, they cause such pain in the world, you know. And I do believe delusion is the greatest, you know, of these. But I think also attachment and greed, which then, you know, creates such delusion in our culture. And fortunately, we can actually deal with it because, you know, in certain cultures, they just don't have that chance to touch that in themselves. And we do, you know. But again, there's that thing that, um, it's a language, it's never enough, you know. And that's the problem with the greed side of it. And the aversive side is we just can't, you know, if it's not the way we want it or like it, then how do we deal with it? And if it's through anger and aversion, then, you know, you cause yourself or someone else suffering, you know, unfortunately. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of, I want to introduce these things. And what we're going to do is you're going to, I would like you to sit in the morning. I think that's a very valuable tool. If you don't do it, you should know, should not should. It's a good idea. And, you know, but without expectation, it's not, you know, and then explore, like, I want to just present this to you that tomorrow in your, because this is a, you know, it is a retreat. a little different aspect to it because we're in our daily lives, but to see where your delusion is, that you delude yourself in different ways. And if you can kind of pick up on when you do that, you know, because you can have some insight into, even though delusion is harder because it's, it's not as obvious as, say, anger or greed or, pride or envy. But it actually is a huge deal. So I encourage you just to, get up, sit in the morning, and then watch your mind. What's it do? Where does it go? And, and you may find that it's been programmed in a certain way that's not necessarily healthy. And then you have a chance to, in a sense, and that's what the wonderful thing about quote practice is you can then kind of explore what that is, So is that clear? Yeah. Well, delusion's a little tough. Marie, yeah. What? Oops. Here comes the.
Hi, Marie. Um, John, of the five, the four are clear, but I've always struggled with understanding delusion. Is it just
Absolutely.
the story distortion,
You got it.
that we come up with, that mental formation? Is that how we think of it? Because it's
Well, it's also, we are emotional creatures. So a lot of the delusion is based on, I mean, it's simple. There is pleasant, there's unpleasant, and then there's delusion or not knowing what it is, And part of our process here is to clarify that. And if you begin to see that, oh, what I'm looking at is, I can call it delusion, but when I look closer at it, I see that it's based on attachment or it's based on aversion, or pride or some kind of jealousy or envy. And so it's actually, you have to break the delusion down because it's kind of like a blanket statement. And there's specifics and you are the specifics that kind of note that. So I'm not saying it's a, shoe in, it's an investigation. And that's really what I'm trying to encourage you this week is this quality of the investigation. And we're looking at some pretty hard facts because when you look at delusion or you look at attachment or greed or you look at aversion or anger and pride and envy. I mean, my goodness, those this isn't the sweet little meditation you thought you were coming to tonight, but that's okay. Because if you actually get this is the thing, Marie. If you get this and you see that, underneath it, oh, there's the first state of it is delusion. The second one is you see either greed, or hatred, or pride, or envy, and then you actually have something to put your finger on, you know, and then you can say, no, I'm not doing that.
Thank you. Because this is a great topic for the week because I feel, is that better? Having currently the experience of a work exchange roommate situation, all of these are coming up.
The multi-hindrance
This is
attack. Yes. Life is a challenge, you know. And I think we're also, there's, I can't say this about the rest of the world, but here I can say, you know, these challenges that we come up against are workable. Now, if you're in Israel or Gaza or Ukraine, I'm not so sure, those are like, they're just heart-wrenching that human beings could, be so thoughtless, and think that somehow violence only begets violence. It's not like it ends something. And here we are, hundreds of centuries into this, and we're still so stupid. It's amazing. Just don't get it. Anyway, please.
Are we on the question portion of
Yes,
the
we're now questioning the
Okay.
question.
because we don't want to ignore the Zoom audience.
So Jennifer had a,
Talk to the ice cream. Okay.
yes, you have to, yeah, you don't have to eat it, but you
Mhm.
got to be close enough for it.
Thank you. My first question, you kind of answered in that delusion. I was like, what is delusion? It just seems like this big amorphous mountain, but that it does really include all of the other quotes poisons. But then I was also wondering too, it's like the delusions we think of, like delusions of grandeur and the delusions that we think that we're better than somebody else or whatever. But what about the delusions of like being less than, the delusion that, I'm never good enough, or that's another delusion.
I'm sorry, it's the same.
It's the same.
It's the same,
It's
no,
all the
when you
same.
look at it, in kind of the suttas, it's like, it can be, you're better than, you're worse than, or you're the same as. And the one that always got me is you're the same as. And that was a delusion, but again, what is it? It's the I and the me and the mine that are suddenly brought to the foreground,
So it comes down to gate, parasam gate, bodhi swaha.
Bodhiswaha, that's it, it's all, but, it's actually, that's the thing, it's actually studying, what is going on. And so if it's something that you can recognize, this is my, we each have different, they say that everyone has different propensities. So, for some people, maybe it's anger. For somebody else, it's greed. And for somebody like me, it's just delusion. Where? What? But no, I've learned to work with that. I understand it, but it has been my, my teacher, you know, and they're just teachers, and can be very, what is it? If we can see into them, then there's less possibility of reacting to them because it comes up instantly, like some causes and conditions. And it just, there's that place or hindrance or, and I go, oh, whoa.
So kind of like it loses the charge when you start to acknowledge it more.
Absolutely.
So I'm thinking, Thich Nhat Hanh, how you would say something like, "Oh, hi there, old friend, come have some tea," kind of, that aspect of ourselves.
That is true,
that
and that's where
acceptance.
you can befriend the delusion, or you can befriend the greed or the aversion. And in some ways, to name them is a powerful tool, we are that, unfortunately.
Thank you. Does anyone from the Zoom audience have a question? You can go ahead and raise your hand. I see Mark has a question. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Mark.
Hi. I'm curious, you have, I guess fear is not one of these. And I find that's like, for example, if I have financial fear, well, if this happens, if I don't have this job, then how am I going to pay for that? Which is all projected into the future. But I'm curious, it's a big thing, across, you look out, it's everywhere. And so, but it's not part of the poisons. And I'm curious about that.
It's not, they don't, as far as the 5 poisons go, you know what? Fear is the overlying one. Because that's, not enough or too much or, so fear is a underlying emotion that actually supports or the delusion, So yeah, it's not classically one of them, but then as an emotion, because it sometimes causes that, either either attack or run or freeze, the fight, flight, or freeze response, and fear, fear is that separates, and I think in some levels, some people are very fearful, and our culture is very fearful. But some of us don't deal with it so much, and other people deal with it all the time. It's like saying, my job, my culture, my family, my car, the fear of all the trepidation of our being alive in this culture. I'm amazed, we drive around these tin cans, and it is just such a, I mean, at 60 miles an hour, wow. I know in Thailand, there's more car deaths than any place else in the world, just because they have no sense of driving. I mean, it's awful. It shouldn't, yeah, it is awful.
John, Cindy has a question. Go ahead, Cindy. Ask your
Please.
question.
Hi, John. Hi, everyone. Greetings from Dharamsala. John, my question has to do with delusion, and I was wondering if you could talk about the self that exists and the self that does not exist.
When it doesn't exist, it doesn't exist.
The selflessness related to delusion.
It's
Thank
just, when self is a delusion, and this is kind of from a Buddhist point of view, is that when you concretize who you think you are, then you have entered the world of delusion. And if it's not there, a lot of the times there is the mechanism of identification to self. And then there's so many moments it's not there. And that we begin to see that when it's not there, there is no, there's no attachment to anything. It's just simply, this is what's happening. And I think that's great. But as soon as something threatens you, in any way, whether it's, food, sex, or rock and roll, you then create this concretization of who you think you are. And that's expensive. Let's put it that way. And so we're trying to train ourselves we see the consequences of this thing called selfing. And we also know that when it's not there, that life's pretty good. It's just, we're not creating anything, except that, I go back to that question, Cindy, about fear. And fear illuminates the self. That's all it does, And we do have the tools to minimize the reactivity towards it. And that's, to me, what this practice is all about, is that we minimize our reactivity. Otherwise, you're just swept along by all the delusion. So, Cindy, I don't know if that was an appropriate answer, but it's what I thought.
Yes, that was good. Thank you, John.
I mean, if there's no self, you don't have to worry. Self, you do. Eric.
John. Would it be fair to say then that you mentioned separateness and that ignorance is like all the suffering stems from ignorance, which would be of the Dhamma, correct? Of the nature of things as they truly are,
Mhm.
which is not separate.
That's correct.
So then when any kind of self-referencing is there at all, that's based on conditions and stories and
self and delusion.
all of our
Yeah.
lenses that we look through.
Right.
But if it's the truth of things as they really are, there's no self-referencing whatsoever. It's just, it is.
That's all.
Would that be right?
That's right. It's the world is. And I'm
burning,
not saying
too.
good or bad, because it is samsara, but because it is, and we have, we choose to be reactive or not, and so we choose to empower the self, and of course the fear dominates that on some level, because when we do that, we create separation. So I'm going to give you just another kind of view of this is the world of non-separateness, which is really what we're, in a sense, trying to look at. And the world of non-separateness, one thing, there's no fear. The other one is because there's no separateness, there is no self. And if there's no self, then there's no suffering, And that's really a Buddha. A Buddha is someone who they don't identify. They see clearly, but they don't identify. And I think that's marvelous. Thanks.
John, do we have time for one more question?
Absolutely.
All right. Anyone from the Zoom audience have a burning question?
I don't know
Quickly.
if the burning is the right word. But
A cool breeze question.
there you go.
I have a question. This is Marcia. John, my question is about this, no self, and yet there is self-referencing in a way that's positive and helpful and kind, and so, and self-awareness. So just to, kind of give a little bit of a balance of no self, but also of the self that we carry around with us all the time, that needs to be aware and awake and realize what we're up to, and we can't always be in no self, because I don't know what that would even, I can't even imagine what that would be like. I guess
No.
that's a Buddhist thing.
Well, first of all, we have this, you could say, relative self that in some ways, the relative self is very magnetized by its liking and disliking, and therefore it is delusional. And we have to live with that delusion, you know. It means that you may see it and you may feel it, you know, because it's just that's being here. But you don't necessarily have to react to it. You know, that's the extra part. You actually can, you know, this is the thing, I always love this thing of, and I've learned it a long time, is where when there's a reaction is to pause, you know, and that pause is where wisdom can come in. Without that pause, you know, and it's why I think we have to learn the discipline of sitting, because it actually is the strengthening of that truth about patience and our ability to sometimes it's so interesting, it's just waiting it out for a moment, because the reactivity is it's right there, you know. And so we have to create this, you know, and it maybe it's a 2 or 3 second pause, but it is a pause. And in that pause is where this intelligence lies. And you don't get the second ice cream, you know, but it give you a tummy ache anyway. So it's okay. So you got your homework, you know, and to look at this, the delusional, you know, and the thing is, this is more of a, you know, it's a reflection. It's one of the reflections. And it is seeing this thing of self and no self, seeing the reactivity and the non-reactivity. And by somehow seeing the non-reactivity and understanding what it feels like to do that, and how supportive it is to really a equanimous mind and an open heart, because I think so much of this, you know, anger is its opposite is metta, of greed is generosity, of delusion is wisdom, is our seeing how things work. So I want you to work on your wisdom factor. You know, if you can get that, then these others will, you know, the thing is we have habits, mental habits from childhood and even pre-childhood, you know, it's something you came in with. And part of it is undoing that on some level, so that we have, you know, we have wisdom, we have generosity, and we have lots of love. How's that? So we're going to just take a moment here to do a little metta, and then Jen has some announcements, and you know, whatever you have done in the past that was unskillful is okay. You know, it's just how we learn, you know. And we can also have tremendous fear, tremendous anger, you know, that we deal with due to causes and conditions. And we can also be better than that. And to me, that's really the practice here, is can you see through what's going on? Can you then change your, you know, maybe your habit, you know, and begin to open to this world of wisdom and generosity and loving kindness. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Yeah, why not? Anything else you're doing? So just taking a moment and first of all, I just want to acknowledge you for your journey here and being here, and I hope to see you this week and the day long, which I'm going to be doing on awakening, since this week is really about some of the difficulties that exist. You are precious. To learn to love yourself is ultimately to love all beings. To criticize or to harm yourself is actually to harm oneself and all beings. So we try to free ourselves from our past conditioning so that we can see with the eyes of wisdom and generosity and loving kindness. And again, if there's any merit or power that we create through our coming together like this, whether it's insights or just of just resting in an open and natural mind, to see a bit of the sheer luminosity that exists when we don't interfere with the known world. May all beings everywhere be happy,